President Trump is expected to sign a new wave of executive orders today, and he just approved an additional pause on some tariffs. The hold on tariffs on most Mexican goods will now extend through April 2nd. In a statement on Truth Social, President Trump said, quote, "I have agreed that Mexico will not be required to pay tariffs on anything that falls under the USMCA agreement," referencing the North American Free Trade Agreement he negotiated in his first term. President Trump said he made this move as, quote, "an accommodation and out of respect for President Sheinbaum," talking about Mexico's president. While the White House says today's executive orders will not be in connection to dismantling the Department of Education, CBS News has confirmed that it is something the president is working on, although the timing of such a move is unclear. CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang is digging into all this for us. So, Weijia, do we have any inkling as to what these executive orders will be that the president signs?
Rest assured, our team has been trying to find that out, Lindsay, but no, we do not. And, you know, it's not unusual that we don't know until the cameras are on in the Oval Office and the president goes through his binders of executive orders as he signs them. But as you mentioned, it is not going to have anything to do with the Department of Education, according to the press secretary.
So why does the president, and really it's been a conservative talking point, Republican goal, for many terms now. But why does President Trump want to shut down the Department of Education?
Well, at the end of the day, the bottom line is he says it's not necessary. And so I think it's important to understand what the Department of Education does and does not do. It doesn't determine curriculums for schools. It doesn't dictate what schools and children have to learn. That is up to the states. But its biggest function is distributing billions and billions of dollars in financial aid to students. It also enforces non-discriminatory policies for schools, and it also collects research and spreads that so people understand, you know, how children are doing. And so it's only a 4,400 or so employee department. So we're talking about a small department to begin with. But the concern, Lindsay, is that, you know, even though these functions are limited, they still are quite important. So in terms of the federal aid, that would have to be moved to another agency, and we don't know how the other responsibilities would or would not be distributed.
Weijia, let's talk tariffs. After granting a 1-month delay on tariffs impacting the big three automakers, cars and car parts that come into the U.S. from Canada and Mexico, President Trump is now also delaying most tariffs on goods from Mexico until April 2nd that fall under this agreement. What more do we know?
Well, we know that the president spoke to the president of Mexico this morning, and it was apparently a productive conversation because out of that, the president announced this pause on goods, Mexican goods that are covered under the trade agreement that the U.S. has with Mexico and Canada. It's important to note that unlike Canada, Mexico did not respond right away to those U.S. tariffs that went into effect earlier this week, did not slap retaliatory fees on American products. Instead, the president said she was going to wait to see how things went before taking any action. She said she'd give it until Sunday before making a decision and responding. Of course, it is Thursday, and things ended well for her. As far as Canada goes, there is a 1-month exemption on automobiles, but that is for Canada and Mexico, more for the American companies that would be affected. This came after the president spoke to the big three U.S. automakers, but it does show sort of how you know, the president wants to handle these negotiations, and he has left room for movement, which is why we have seen that pause yesterday and then another one today, Lindsay. What we don't know is whether more pauses will come, but the White House has made abundantly clear that he is all in when it comes to tariffs.
Weijia Jiang, thank you so much. If the president does move forward with dismantling the Department of Education, millions of students across the country could feel the impacts. The department is responsible for more than $18 billion in federal grant programs for supplemental funding to K-12 schools in high-poverty areas. It also spends roughly $15.5 billion to cover education costs for children with disabilities. And the department oversees $1.6 trillion in student loan debt, leading to questions about what this could mean for borrowers moving forward. Zachary Schermele is a reporter at USA Today. He joins us now for more on this. Zach, thanks for being here. We just heard quite a bit from Weijia, but please tell us in your reporting what the Department of Education does and what it does not do.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. Listen, I think that it's important for all of us in this moment where there is a lot happening in Washington to just sort of take a deep breath, right? There's a lot of reporting that is circulating from CBS News and my colleagues over here at USA Today, as well as others about the future of the federal education department. But I think that Weijia laid it out great there that we're not entirely sure what the president is planning with respect to the future of the agency. But what we do know is that Linda McMahon, his newly confirmed education secretary, has promised. She said during her confirmation hearing that congressionally, that appropriated money that has been appropriated by Congress, right, for schools and for students, which includes that Title I funding that you were pointing to, Lindsay, as well as money for the federal student aid programs, for the nearly $2 trillion that make up the federal student loan portfolio, that money is not necessarily going to be affected. But, Senator Susan Collins, a Republican from Maine, asked McMahon during her confirmation hearing, does that mean that if the education department is dismantled, that this funding might not be affected somehow, that it couldn't be impacted? I think we'll have to see.
And you write that abolishing the department is easier said than done. Is that purely from a political standpoint? Because doing so would likely require support from Senate Democrats. Is it also about essentially setting up mechanisms to replace what is being abolished?
Right. So I think when it comes to what we think about what's possible here in Washington, right, the president doesn't have the authority to unilaterally abolish federal agencies. That can't be said enough. In order to abolish the federal education department entirely, what the president needs to do is he needs to go through Congress. And there's legislation that's sitting in Congress right now that would move forward with potentially reshuffling some of the most important offices within the department, the Office for Civil Rights, for example, and the Federal Student Aid Office to other corners of the federal government. But, in order to do that, he has to pass the 60 vote threshold to move forward and move past the filibuster in the Senate. And it's not entirely clear that Democrats are going to be on board with that sort of an idea anytime soon. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to exercise his discretion over staffing at the department and its policy priorities. But Ed is still around today. It's going to be around tomorrow, and it's going to be around in the next couple of weeks or so, even as we're having these conversations.
So we've touched on this, but can you give us some more detail of how student loans and financial aid can be affected, and also what this means for civil rights enforcement and federal school programs like Title I for low-income schools and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act?
Right. So when we're thinking about the federal role in schooling, in particular when it comes to the education department, what I keep telling people is that the federal government has no role in school curriculum, just like we just said earlier. Where the federal government does come in terms of making a difference for students' lives, is in making sure that the most vulnerable students can get to school, right? That they can stay in school and that they can feel safe in school, and that they can graduate or finish whatever program it is that they're enrolled in with a valuable credential that ultimately allows them to be successful, right? So the ways in which the education department accomplishes those goals is through the Office for Civil Rights, which already has seen a significant number of people who've been put on paid administrative leave as a result of the president's DEI-related executive orders, and the Federal Student Aid Office, which oversees that large student loan portfolio that I just talked about. And, we reported last week, potentially the week before, that the Federal Student Aid Office saw roughly 10% of its staff take buyouts. That was before this last Friday. The department put out an agency-wide email saying that people could take a $25,000 buyout by this Monday.
All right, Zach Schermele, we'll leave it there. Thank you.